Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House, the longest running show on the internet, alongside Mr. Martin Popoff. What's going on, my friend?
Yes, morning, sir. Morning, sir. I'm just looking forward to doing this interesting kind of abstract show here on a chilly fall day in Toronto.
Yes, it's a little chilly here in New York as well. It's overcast skies. Fall is pretty much here. It's like, all of a sudden we went from one to the other. It's the extremes. That's what we deal with here.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So the topic for today's episode, as I take a quick sip of tea, hold on. The topic of today's episode kind of came out of a email group that Martin and I are both a part of that has all sorts of folks from across the music industry that have done all sorts of cool things. And this one was especially busy, Martin. I mean, my email inbox was like lighting up like a Christmas tree
Yeah.
during that week where this was going on. And anyway, kind of what this is all about is in response to the kind of the cool and major send off that Ozzy and Black Sabbath got, but then when Ozzy passed away, the kind of the mass like hysteria and attention that Ozzy's passing got, and the career of Black Sabbath and Ozzy and all this kind of stuff. So one day, and was it Monty who sent the first email? Probably. He's usually the instigator, Monty
Yeah.
Connor, of course, from Roadrunner Records and whatnot. And it was basically like, well, now that this happened, are any surviving hard rock or metal stars, when their time has come, will they get this kind of send off and attention? So that spurred all this back and forth dialogue about who's worthy, who would, who wouldn't, and so this went on for like a week or more. And so I reached out to Martin the other day. I said, why don't we just kind of take this onto the show on Friday and talk about it a little? And Martin came up with a list of 10 people who came up in conversation in this email thread. And we're going to go through each name, and we're going to talk about whether we think that these folks might get this kind of send off or not, and come up with arguments for and against. And our criteria, Martin, was they had to be of a certain age. So in other words, once we start naming the list, you'll understand. But like there were certain bands who are arguably bigger than some of the ones that we might talk about, but they're younger. They're like our age still. So we're not going to bring them into the conversation. So Metallica, in other words, is kind of like the main one. We're not going to talk about the guys from Metallica because that's maybe a conversation for another day down the line. So Martin, I don't know if you want to kind of add any insight to this before we.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that email group, and it's often talking about death, right? When someone dies, someone will put in, oh, check it out, this person died, and then we'll talk about that or whatever. So, yeah, the things said in that email group are priceless over the years, right? I mean, it's been probably over 10 years that thing's been going, and it's just so cool. But and yeah, Monty's one of these guys. I remember years ago, he kind of has this philosophy or theory, and I can picture the words being in there. They're gonna start dropping like flies. They're gonna start dropping like flies. So the idea is that there are a lot of these guys that are older. So this came up, and like you say, it was a response to how remarkable and how big and just relentless the outpouring was for Ozzy, and getting called to be on, to talk about it and stuff, and doing shows on it. And yeah, the other interesting thing is this email group has spawned many. I've done a handful or a few contrarians episodes
We've
based
done a
on
few. We've done a few on
responding
here.
to,
Yep.
yeah, I've done History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff episodes based on getting all riled up about this. I'm one of the more talkative ones in there too. I love arguing with everybody because it's no
And for
hold.
the record, Monty and Martin go at it constantly on this email thread. It's
Yeah,
hilarious. It's
yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I even for years would keep these emails thinking this is just priceless content, right? But then I think, the unwritten rule about all this is none of this goes outside of
Right.
the what's in here, because there's a lot of very personal things
Yeah.
said all the time, right? So it's really cool that way. So yeah, in anyways, that's the background. So I made a list of the 10 names, and we're just going to go back and forth and see if anybody here um is going to get the kind of send off that Ozzy got. And let's start with Angus Young. So Angus Young was a name that came up, and as we go through these, I'm going to try to remember some of the points made by some of the people back and forth in this email group. I don't know if I'll be successful at that, but Angus Young is a funny one where it's kind of based on this guy is a very noticeable character. Um, but working against him is that you don't hear him talk really. I mean, you got to be a super fan to go find interviews and listen to him talk or
Yeah.
whatever. But he's obviously not the lead singer. He's not up there talking on stage. He's just being Angus and doing all those Angus trademark things, wiggling around on the floor, the Chuck Berry walk or whatever. But working in their favor, of course. So yeah, working in their favor is that he's this recognizable character. Everyone knows him. He's pretty much the most famous guy in AC/DC, which is quite a feat in itself to be more famous than the lead singer. But the lead singer, of course, splits that duty with the previous lead singer who's no longer with us. So he's got that juice working against him and Angus rising to the top kind of thing. And then, of course, we know it's underscored and re-stamped by Angus being on the front cover of a lot of the albums just by himself. So he's like their mascot at the same time that he's their guitarist and one of the key writers along with Malcolm. And of course, the other thing going for AC/DC is that they have absolutely, absolutely, totally become part of the pop culture fabric, with having one of the biggest selling albums of all time. You hear those songs at sporting events all the time as well. And I remember back in 1980, it almost felt like a fresh version. This probably happened in the past, but I was too young to notice. But in 1980, I realized that it's like this is heavy metal that has crossed over to the masses. I mean, AC/DC was a heavy metal band, seen that way absolutely in 1980 with that extreme vocal and everything, and that black album cover, and every song being a guitar, bass, and drums, distortion pedal, no ballads song, right? So it just felt like, and then of course this happens with another black album later on, the Black Album, where you've got a heavy metal album just reaching out and permeating the masses, sort of thing. So it's a long and short of way of saying that this is a super famous guy for in every department. But he is also missing the whole Ozzy thing of being the star of the Osbournes and having many, many, lurid headlines about him. There's just no scandal. It's a very closed shop. So I don't know if you want to add anything, but
Yeah.
I'm voting, just to summarize, I'm definitely voting that Angus is not getting the same send off Ozzy is getting.
So a couple things. I think this is one of the more controversial of all the ones we're going to talk about today because I could see the argument for and against him. For one thing, I think the music of AC/DC to the masses, to the casual fans, I think transcends the music of Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne on a
Yeah.
purely a musical perspective. However, how many of those people don't even know his name? He's the AC/DC guy, right? He's the
Yeah.
guy on the album covers. He's the guy who does the funny walk and wears the schoolboy costume, right? I know the guy. I know him. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him because, as you said, he never talks. He wasn't on a TV show. He doesn't do interviews. He's not that guy, right? But
By the
everybody,
way, Pete, let me just interject something. So, just to qualify, this whole discussion and the way it went down in the email group is we're only talking about hard rock people, right?
yes,
Uh, and and the funny thing about that is Monty is really funny. Like anytime anybody misinterprets the question or whatever, he will come down on you like a ton of bricks, kind of thing. To quote Metal Church, and say, "Did you not read the original post? We're not talking about Elton John here. We're not, kind of thing." So yeah, just I wanted to put that in there. Everybody, this is an encapsulated argument about everybody we're talking about here is from the hard rock world and stuff like
yes,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
sure. Yeah, so like I said, I think because you brought up the Osborne show, and I really think that TV show helped make all of this excitement and discussion and interest in Ozzy over the last month. I think that magnified it greatly because I think if you take away that TV show, are the masses all that interested or knowledgeable about the music of Black Sabbath or even Ozzy solo? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Like I said, that's why I think the music of AC, if we're talking music alone, I think it's the death of, and again, we're not trying to predict the death. We're just trying to look into the future about, what might happen. I think the whole attachment to the band and the music of AC/DC will generate a lot of attention when Angus's time comes. Uh, but like you said, he's not looked at as the celebrity like Ozzy is. He never will be. So I would
Mhm.
have to agree with you. I don't think it's, there will be, plenty of interest there. I think because again, if we kind of take this conversation to and to expand on a little bit, will the day where Angus says, okay, we're done as a band, we're retiring, there's no more, does AC/DC deserve like a big concert and send off like Ozzy Black Sabbath got? I would say yes.
Mhm.
I would say yes. But yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
you. I don't think Angus is on the level of an Ozzy Osbourne from a purely personal perspective when the masses are concerned. So I would agree.
And it's interesting, the point I guess of doing that big concert is it felt like there was not an urgency, like it was a surprise to everybody that Ozzy died so soon after that
Yeah.
concert, but there was the idea of his infirmities and his grave afflictions and illnesses and stuff. So yeah, it's incredible to think as we go through this list of the retirement concert thing. Maybe this is a new thing that we will see a bunch of. I mean, I would love to see an ACDC, a concert like that.
100%, right?
Yeah, it'd be incredible. Yeah.
Because how many other bands that are in existence today would love to be a part of that? I mean, that
Yeah.
AC/DC greatly influenced them and the respect that they have from their peers. So I would think that would be a big deal. And I think a lot of people would be into that.
Yeah, they might have even Sharon and the organizers might have already set a template where it's the final concert of that band, and they either play a short set or a regular set at the end of it, and all these superstars are before. So maybe this is a new thing that we're going to see a lot of. So
Yeah, it's very, very possible. It's
cool.
very possible. All right, let me try to find the. I have the list in our
Yeah,
Facebook
I
group.
wrote it out here. I can tell you who's next for you here if you want.
Steven Tyler. Okay. All right. So I don't think personally that Steven Tyler is quite on the level of an Ozzy Osbourne. Um, Again, someone who is more of a public figure. And so if we're comparing to the last guy we spoke about, obviously Steven Tyler is more high profile than Angus Young, I think. Is the music of Aerosmith on a greater level than AC/DC or a Black Sabbath? I think that's arguable. I think that the one good thing that Steven has going for him, and we've talked about this before, is that, the music of Aerosmith has a couple different eras, and they've been fairly active all throughout their career. Whereas, Black Sabbath specifically, or maybe even Ozzy to an extent, carries a much older crowd. I mean, how about the younger generations who hopped onto the music of Aerosmith starting in the mid late 80s or into the 90s, and that's their preferred music of the band over the
Mhm.
classic stuff like we are. So I think that there's this potential that Steven Tyler and the band and the music has appealed to even younger people than us, which broadens the scope here. He's also been on plenty of TV shows, right? Was he on American Idol or one of those
Yep.
shows for a
Yep.
while?
American Idol.
Um, but again, I don't think it's on Ozzy level, right? I think it would be a big deal. I think it would be more so than Angus Young. But I'm not kind of getting that love so much. Like I don't know, Ozzy was this special character, and will are any of the ones we're going to talk about today really stack up to this? I mean, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but yeah, I'm not feeling it, Martin. Are you?
No, not particularly. And when I think about Steven Tyler, it almost feels like he's a little reclusive. He doesn't do a lot of the interviews for the band.
Right.
So you don't see him out there talking a lot. I mean, obviously he did his autobiography and he was on TV, but even when I see a picture of him, it feels a little special or rare that you don't normally see him that much. So it's a weird one, having been on TV and having been this live band forever. And he's actually sold more records than Ozzy. You add up the sales over time. These 7 times platinum albums. I think Pump, Get a Grip are both 7 times platinum. Nine Lives is double platinum. I think Permanent Vacation is 5 times platinum. Toys in
Twice
the
was,
Attic
yeah,
is 9 or 10. Like it's super high. And Greatest Hits, I think, is Diamond. I think
yeah.
it's gone over top, and Rock's sold well, and so yeah, so they have sold a ton of records. But again, you wonder also if some of the bad boy image or the bad will has left bad vibes in the band. We know they've aired some of their dirty laundry over the years. We've all heard about the drug problems in that. And yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of kind of bad will for all the albums from Nine Lives through Just Push Play and Honky
Yeah.
Tonk Bobo and Music from Another
And
Dimension,
kind of a
right?
lack of a solo career, right? That I mean, 'cause
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
Ozzy proved that he could go on and do it on his own,
yeah,
and really became a guy who had two careers, one with the
yeah,
band, one with the solo stuff. Steven really hadn't hasn't done that,
yeah.
to that level. The thing here is that I think because whenever we have heard from Steven, when you've seen him on TV shows and whatnot, he has the personality. Could he have been that guy? I
Oh
think
yeah,
so.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Absolutely, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he's a very intriguing guy to listen to. He has a lot of cool things to say. He's got a
yeah,
really fun personality. He's got that kind of tough Boston thing going on, and
yeah.
but he never really became that guy.
Yeah, and it feels like I don't know how true this is because they do have some impressive numbers worldwide, but they really do feel like an American situation rather than a world situation.
Right, right.
And I know early on, the tours, the forays overseas were few and far between kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not particularly feeling it. I don't know if this is going to be one of those bands where you talked about Ozzy's music, and everybody knows the intro to Mr. Crowley or a little bit of Crazy Train, or I don't know because of the sports events and stuff. And Aerosmith kind of has some of that, but not particularly. You think of Sweet Emotion kicking off or Walk This Way kicking off. They've got these big songs, but it's almost like these little snippets of Ozzy are super big too at the same time. The string scrape of Randy Rhoads coming down and all that, right? And the vibra slap and all those sorts of sounds. So no, I also feel in a weird way it's not, it doesn't feel like we're going to get the same. There's not the same deep love for, and the salt of the earth feel that everybody kind of felt from Ozzy, where he felt more like one of the guys and less like a rock star, despite being a massive rock star and that whole thing.
Do you think it also helps Ozzy's case because he was part of what is considered the godfathers of heavy metal,
Yeah, yeah,
whereas Aerosmith is like that second wave, right?
yeah,
Not
yeah,
quite as impactful.
yeah. All right, so my next one, and this was brought up and hotly debated as well, Jimmy Page,
Yeah.
right? And there was a lot of battle between, certain Led Zeppelin members. Well, there's more to talk about here, but so Jimmy Page, um, you know, it almost feels also again, this is an absolutely massive band. Everybody loves them, but as time moves on, I wonder if the kids in every subsequent generation are really thinking that deeply about Jimmy Page in particular versus maybe Robert versus the envelope situation of the band itself, Led Zeppelin, or certain specific Led Zeppelin songs. Something about the Jimmy Page ones just feels a little academic, right? And there's also some bad vibes in there. for Jimmy to do with the the borrowing and uncrediting or not crediting of old blues songs and having those lawsuits and stuff. Some of that stuff rose above the news and got on CNN and stuff like that. And then also, if you're watching carefully, I think a lot of fans of Jimmy, there are bad vibes about how post Led Zeppelin, there really wasn't much to speak of that was super interesting out of him. The Firm was kind of a dud, and Outrider, people don't like Outrider, and there was Coverdale Page, there was you add it up, there's a fair bit, right? There's Walking into Clarksdale, which I really like, and the No Quarter album and whatnot. And he goes on tour with the Black Crowes. But again, like Angus, though, we are talking about a guitarist who he actually does a fair number of interviews, but you have to seek them out. It's again, there's something academic feeling about this choice where you have to be a deep music fan, to appreciate this situation. So I don't know. There's gonna be some incredible uh fawning over Jimmy and how he's an absolute god, but it's going to be kind of cult-like feeling, kind of cult and small, and like I
It's
say,
all going to be from
academic.
us. It's all going to be
Yeah,
from us,
yeah.
right?
It's
Because
it yeah, it's our tribe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a huge gulf. Nobody will deny the impact and the hugeness of Led Zeppelin. I mean, nobody will. Um, but as you stated, when you really, really come down to it, Jimmy's been kind of invisible for decades, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to work against him a little bit. But people in our age group obviously worship him and all that he's done. And you could arguably say that Led Zeppelin were the biggest band in the history of rock and roll after the Beatles, right? And but what else is there from him other than these couple of things that you've already mentioned, which many of us love as well. This is a hard one, and it came up in the conversation about comparing his loss potentially to like what the outpouring of love for Eddie Van Halen, right? Both guys innovators on the guitar and hugely respected to musicians, but was there something a little bit different about Eddie that maybe Jimmy is not going to get? An
Hmm.
outpouring that might differ a little bit, that might I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see when that time comes. But yeah, I'm not feeling this one either. I think it's gonna be a shock and a sad day, but I don't think we're approaching that Ozzy level with this either.
Yeah. All right. What's your next choice?
All right, next choice is Robert Plant. We'll stick on Zeppelin here. I think here's where it gets a little tricky, right? Because as a couple of the guys stated, they felt that the magnification of Robert is going to eclipse Jimmy because of Robert being the kind of like the focal point of the band, that front man. There's something about the lead singer, right? That usually makes them that's the target of the affection for everybody. Robert's got a couple things going for him here, in that Robert's been very visible in the ensuing years of Led Zeppelin breaking up. He's got a very successful solo career. He's crossed over into the mainstream sort of with the Alison Krauss stuff. He regularly tours. He's out there on the touring circuit, playing the festivals, all that stuff. He does lots of interviews. He pops up in places you'd least expect it, right? I can't tell you how many times I've
Buying
been
stuff in
told.
little markets and
Right,
stuff.
he's all over the place, right? It's like, guess who I ran into today at the local record shop? Robert Plant was there. What the hell is he doing there, right? So he's been everywhere. And he's now looked at as this kind of like mythical figure from yesteryear who's still very relevant today. And, you know, Robert Plant for many, many years was looked at. He was the vocal god, right? You talk about the guitar gods. Well, he was that guy for so many years. And I think he still has a lot of that in him. Um, Again, are we approaching Ozzy levels here? I don't quite know, but I would probably argue that of everybody we're going to talk about today, this might be the closest to what we're looking at and we're trying to get to, right? I think this is comes very close to saying, yes, this might hit that needle, very similar to what we saw with Ozzy. I don't know, Martin. You think we're close with him? I think this might be the closest out of everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of respect for him as a rock and roll historian,
Yeah,
given the second half of the solo canon, which is very like teaching the history of rock sort of thing with these really old-timey sounds and stuff and the covers albums and all that kind of thing. I think people like that. I think people just generally love Robert Plant.
yeah,
He's just this guy that people think is kind of like an Aussie salt of the earth sort of guy, despite the mythical status that he rose to. But I think some guys in the email group were pretty harsh about how his solo career means nothing, kind of thing, right? Um, and to a certain extent, yeah, the second half is a pretty obscure career. He's like a theater act, and it's mellow, and there's mandolins, and
yeah.
it's just a very academic, again, that word academic, kind of a band that he has now. But he had a pretty good solid solo career in the 80s, and some good records there. He was very active. So yeah, he had a cool second act. And he would probably say the second act has been very, very satisfying. I know he says that in interviews, that I think when he looks back on his life, he more way different than Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy's the spokesman for Zeppelin, but Robert Plant is the spokesman for saying, I think, when I go to my grave, it's like all these solo records that I've done are probably the most important thing or the best thing I've done, like
I
especially the more recent ones, right?
I would agree 100% that he would say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he loves moving forward and exploring new music, and he's enthusiastic about all kinds of different world music and stuff. So yeah, he just wants to keep being that guy chasing the muse sort of thing, and I think
Yeah.
people respect that about him. So
And I
all
think too,
right.
before we move on from Zeppelin, I do
Yeah.
want to say, out of a lot of what we're talking about today, I absolutely think, and maybe it's too late, maybe they should have done this already, but the big concert we got for Sabbath and Ozzy should have happened for Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I would
Yeah.
argue that they should do it soon if they're going to even consider it before it's kind of too late while
Yeah.
the three guys are still around. But
But
maybe,
you say that, and I guess there's an approximation of this when you think of the Kennedy Center honors, right? Which is kind of the
yeah,
same sort of thing. They're sitting in the balcony watching, sort of thing, right?
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, you're right. It would be pretty amazing. Yeah, like I say, this would be an interesting trend where yeah, that's something that still could be done, right? Kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they wanted to, I'm sure Jimmy would love to do it. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, just short set, just go up and knock out a couple songs at the end or whatever.
Yeah.
Same thing as
But that would
Sabbath.
be the official, this is it, because people have been asking for this forever, right? Well, when are we going to see
Yeah.
them get back together again? It's like, all right, we'll do it one last time. We're going to do a big benefit show, kind of like what the Sabbath thing was, and that's it. And then no more discussion of it, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my next one is Alice Cooper. This one came up, and I think there's a pretty good case to be made for Alice Cooper, except much of his success in terms of record sales is long, long time ago, 1974. 75 going back kind of thing to 1970. It's literally the early 70s is when he sold the most records, although he was a hair metal star too. But this guy has done so many things in his life too. He's been so visible for so many years. It is a character everybody knows and loves. People love Alice Cooper. Still sells a lot of tickets. Still makes records all the time, and is still out there doing it. Deep into his old age. He's fortunately had that kind of voice that he can do that thing live, no problem. So Alice Cooper is a very, very recognizable guy. He's considered a deeply participating in all parts of American life, an American legend, an all American kind of guy. Comes from Detroit, but he's kind of lived all over. Um, and yeah, it's the visibility, it's the look, it's the makeup. Song wise, people really don't really remember too many out. Not too many Alice Cooper songs are really in the public consciousness. Maybe I'm 18, not really. School's Out, maybe a little more, but not a whole heck of a lot else. So it's more the concept of Alice Cooper. But yeah, I'm just amazed at when you go back into the days with Shep Gordon being the manager and stuff, and all the promotional things they pulled off, and how just crazy, crazy they were in the news all the time from 1970 through the end of Muscle of Love era, and then also Welcome to My Nightmare, being on TV and all that stuff.
Yep.
I almost look at this entire list, and I'm close to thinking he's the closest from anybody here. I mean,
Well, because he's a celebrity. Because now I think
yeah,
with him, it kind of transcends the music, right? He's
yeah,
that celebrity character. Because I think a lot of people, you know, sometimes I like to kind of do this whole thing where if you were walking down, you were in a mall, or you're walking down a busy street, and you stop 10 people and you ask them a question about an Alice Cooper, probably
yeah,
what, 9 out of 10 people at least know who he is.
yeah,
Are they going to remember him for the music or just because he's that guy, right? They know him from other things that he's done. Because I think to me, Alice, he's been in movies, been on TV shows, he was on radio for ages, he plays golf, right? So I
yeah,
think Alice is a true celebrity, more
yeah,
so in the eyes of the public, the general public, than a guy who's saying "School's Out" and "I'm 18" and "Welcome to My Nightmare" and Poison and all that kind of stuff. So you might be right. This maybe more is on a celebrity level, which Ozzy kind of was as well. Because I think, as we both agree, you take away the Osbournes TV show, is the outpouring of love for Ozzy as great as it was? Maybe not.
yeah. And it's funny, you think of the Aussie catalog and stuff, and you think it's still something that's kind of made for the metalheads. It's not that mainstreamy, right?
Not at all.
But like an Aerosmith or whatever, there's just the big hits came out every once in a while. Mama, I'm Coming Home and stuff like that, right? So you had just the big songs that catapulted those albums up. But yeah, it still feels like, yeah, as the years go on, the Alice Cooper catalog is not really in the public eye. Most of the Aussie catalog isn't. I'm almost starting to feel like Aerosmith and Zeppelin aren't really, really, really in the public eye as the generations keep rolling over, sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
All
see.
right. What do you got next?
What do we have next? Well, how apropos that I get to choose this one. Tony Iommi. So, from a strictly personal level, I would hope that the outpouring of love for Tony would be amazing and reach Ozzy levels. Realistically, that's not going to be the case because, to the casual fan, again, Ozzy's the guy they look to in Black Sabbath, even though Tony's the guy who creates all the riffs. I think from the music community, Tony is going to be huge. I think. From the hard rock and metal community for sure, from his peers for sure. It's going to be a loss that's going to hit really, really, really deep. But again, to casual fans, to the masses, no, not at all. Sadly, no. Um, Tony is always out. Tony's been out there more in recent years in his older age. Does lots of interviews now, and he's, been very, got the cologne and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, to musicians, it's going to be absolutely enormous. Maybe probably on Jimmy Page levels, but what else is there? You know, Tony's not really a character. He's not a mainstream guy. He's not really a celebrity. So I'm going to say no with Tony, even though personally speaking, selfishly speaking, to me, I think he deserves probably more than a lot of people on this list. What do
Yeah, he's very soft spoken even when he does interviews.
you? Yeah,
But he is the godfather of heavy metal.
yeah,
Yeah, he's pretty much, I look at this whole list, he's pretty much the most important guy along with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page,
yeah.
in terms of the history of the whole thing. So, all right, my next one is Gene Simmons, also a massive celebrity. People absolutely recognize him, and huge record sales and huge ticket sales, and lots of TV appearances and in ads and all that kind of stuff. This is a crazy famous guy, but I think part of the problem there also is and this is caused by the Kiss fans more than anything, is the complaining that Kiss fans constantly do about all things Kiss while they love him to death at the same time, right? And Gene gets most of that for being too mercenary and all this sort of stuff, and the commerciality and the merchandising and everything. And just his look sometimes, with the glasses and the pout on his lips, he just looks like he doesn't want his picture taken or he doesn't want to be playing live when it's probably not true. He loves rock and roll, right?
He
He
loves
just
the attention. He loves the
Yeah,
attention.
it's just weird. It's like he loves rock and roll and he's a big student of rock and roll, but he never looks like he wants to be doing it, right? And
Yeah.
he never wants to really particularly be talking about it either, right? He just likes talking about the business of Kiss and the whole thing, or politics or whatever, right? It seems like he wants to talk about anything else but the albums, more than anything, right? Which is kind of funny. Yeah, it's going to be massive, massive news. But it feels like with some of these guys, I feel a theme going that there's this undercurrent of bad vibes that you get with Jimmy Page and you get with Steven Tyler, and I think you're also getting that a little bit with Gene Simmons. So
Yeah, yeah, and you have to wonder if that's going to work to his advantage because Gene's been such a controversial figure for so long that either it's going to really affect it one way or the other. I don't know. I just think that everybody knows who he is, so it's going to draw a lot of attention, whether you love him or you don't. It's going to be a big deal. And again, he's a public figure. I mean, they had the TV show, right? I mean, here's another example of some guy who's been on TV. And again, how many people who watched that show really had no idea of the music of Kiss, or that doesn't even really come into the conversation. So we'll see. On the
all
same
right.
token, Paul Stanley, I think this is not quite on the Gene Simmons level. I think Paul is out of the two of them, because they kind of go hand in hand. Paul is the guy who's more respected and maybe more loved, and there's not all that controversy. And even though he is like the main singer in Kiss and he's kind of like the front man, he's kind of low key. He's much, much more of a low key guy. He doesn't put his foot in his mouth like Gene all the time. And I think he'll get more respect from the music community, but I don't think this is going to be an enormous deal when the time comes. And again, he's a little bit younger than most of the other guys on this list. I think, what is Paul, 72,
Hmm,
74,
not sure. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
something like that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be on Gene's level, but I think that he's going to get more respect from the casual fans, I think, when that time comes.
Yeah. All right. And my next one, I have Ian Gillan. So again, this feels very academic. There's Deep Purple. I when I hear people talk about Deep Purple from the outside, or people who aren't particularly fans, I do kind of get convinced by the point that they don't mean a big deal out there in the pop culture world. They're not that big a band. I can be convinced by people that they've kind of just gone under the radar their whole career. I mean, I respect them to death, and I think all of these albums they've been making recently are some of the best music they've ever made. They are probably the number one old timer band that is making vital and incredible creative music, beautifully produced by Bob Ezrin in recent years. Playing live, Ian's had his ups and downs as a singer, but the last time I saw him, he was knocking it out of the park. He was
Yeah.
incredible. So yeah, this is a band never really sold a lot of records. They are absolutely a world band. I mean, actually, as I go through this entire list, they're probably the biggest world band on this list. So I think worldwide, when you bring in all the gnashing of teeth and sorrow that you're going to get from Indonesia and India and Japan, when you bring all that into it as well, I think that brings it up a little bit. But no, I can't even remember. I don't think this is a name that even came up in our email discussion, and I know it would have been ruthlessly shot down. Even though every single one of those guys adores Deep Purple,
Right.
they would be very like, come on, what are you talking about, kind of thing here. There's no one's gonna care about Ian Gillan dying, kind of thing would have been the tone in our email back and forth. But yeah, so this one feels pretty academic, and sadly, I think even over the years, even though this is a band that can still go out and tour and sell a lot of tickets, it just feels like they're kind of at cult band status again. They've only had a few platinum, double platinum albums ever. They're just, it seemed like they were a massive, massive band in the 70s, and they were. But again, that, even that is really a sort of 1970 to 1975 and a half sort of thing. It's not all of the
And
70s,
just think
right?
about it. So really, it's been since Perfect Strangers because they became a big band again for that reunion,
Yeah.
but that quickly died down. So that was already
Yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that's only single platinum.
Yeah,
And then, it's dying off even before Come Taste the Band kind of thing. I mean, they're still big, but they're really falling apart at that point. But,
yeah,
Mark II is over in 1973. Mark II is 70 to 73. It's short,
it
you
is.
know.
It is.
But boy, were they ever in the news then. Like it's just like every, articles everywhere about them, articles, ads, massive, massive ticket sales, right?
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, there's kind of go back to something you mentioned before, like when you think of like the Sabbath catalog and the Ozzy solo catalog, stuff like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley and No More Tears and Paranoid and War Pigs and Black Sabbath. I mean, that those songs kind of have transcended the decades
Yeah.
and have this kind of mass appeal on a weird level because they've been introduced all over the place and continue to be played and whatnot. The music of Deep Purple, as much as we love it,
Smoke on the Water isn't even everywhere anymore, right? I
no,
mean, that
right?
just seems to have died out since our youth, right?
Yeah, and maybe you hear Highway Star here and there, but it's just like it's not, if we go back to Zeppelin, I mean, rock and roll, right? The song Rock and Roll is
Mm,
played in commercials all the time. Stairway to Heaven is still a big deal. So
yeah.
there's that. With the music of Deep Purple, it's on a much lesser scale. So again, what we're trying to talk about here, folks, is that is these mythical, legendary rock stars appealing to the masses and how when the day comes when they're no longer with us, what's going to be the reaction to it. And it's just like, but some of these are just they don't really appeal to the masses anymore. And as Martin, pointed out, Deep Purple has released a lot of really, really great albums over the last 25, 30 years, but who's really buying those records? People our age and older.
Yeah.
Young folks aren't getting turned on to the music of Deep Purple. Are young folks going to see Deep Purple when they tour relentlessly every year in smaller halls now? So it's quite different. I think that the music community, when a guy like Ian Gillan is no longer with us, is going to react accordingly and respectfully, like they should. But it's not going to be on a mass level like an Ozzy Osbourne. It's just not going to.
Yeah. All right. Your last
Last
one.
but not least, we're going to stay on Deep Purple, Ritchie Blackmore. So here is, it's a very similar argument. I think Ritchie, now all of a sudden we're bringing the guitar community in here. So Ritchie is much loved and respected in the guitar community, and much like a Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton and a Jeff Beck and Eddie, maybe not quite on the level of Eddie Van Halen, but I think what we're going to get with Ritchie when that day comes is kind of what we got with Jeff Beck a few years ago. A lot of love, a lot of respect, a lot of sadness from the musician community. But again, you walk down the street and you ask 10 people, what do you think of Ritchie Blackmore? How many are going to say, I have no idea who that guy is? Nine out
Yeah.
of 10?
Yeah.
Probably, sadly,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. So again, it's going to be a sad day for all of us who love him, for all the people who respect him, for all the people that he influenced, right? But beyond that, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that we just figured let's we should include him sort of thing. I'm not even sure we even talked about him in this situation, but and again it feels a little bit like Jimmy Page where the post. I mean, we did get Rainbow, but Blackmore's Nights on a pretty lower level, obviously, and also I think the semi-knowledgeable fans at least feel the bad vibes that the knowledgeable fans feel as well. We know about the feuding with Ian, and we know about kind of being reclusive and a little bit cranky and not going to the Hall of Fame thing and all that sort of stuff. So again, I think bad vibes work against some of these people. But I don't think it's even close. So yeah, but I think we end up with a situation where Ozzy, it surprised us, I think, a little bit, but it just seemed like he had all the pieces of the puzzle that are going to make him remembered, right? He just turned up in all the right places and did all the interesting things. Some might say he stumbled drunkenly into all the right places. But there he was, and at the end he was just so famous for so many different reasons. Um, while at the same time we think like, there are tens of millions of people who know the deep tracks on Bark at the Moon, or know anything about Down to Earth, or even the deep tracks on, they don't know Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy and stuff. So it's weirdly that it's just this weird situation where there are these tens and tens of millions of people mourning his death, but most of those people don't know his music very much.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, how many millions of people are in this world who don't care about the personality, don't really care about all the albums. But maybe only a handful of songs ever touched their lives, and maybe they caught a couple of TV shows or appearances or read a book or
Yeah,
whatever. That's all they need, right? And that's enough to make that person up here as opposed to down here.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, I think, one of the things for folks watching, you probably can appreciate this, is like a lot of us look at these bands, these musicians, these albums, these songs on a much different level than the majority of the people on the planet, right? To them, music is just something that's kind of there. We dissect, we analyze, we discuss at length. We're really in the minority, Martin. I mean, that's just, we here we are meeting every 2 weeks talking about this kind of stuff. And to most people, it's like, who cares about all this, right? It's all mumbo jumbo. So, to them, Ozzy Osbourne, he's just this guy, right? You're absolutely right. Do they know 90% of the albums in the Ozzy and Black Sabbath catalog and the song? No. But you know what? The fact
yeah,
that they know and love Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley and Paranoid and a couple other things and like the TV show, that's enough to make
yeah.
him that figure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
no one catches up in this whole list.
Not
But
really.
but
No.
we've talked about maybe raising the stakes, and next time, widen it beyond the hard rock thing and see if anybody is going to
Yeah,
maybe
because
show
I
up,
think
right?
I think there are some folks in the non-hard rock venue, so right, that I think could get to that level.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's
I don't
save
even
that
know.
for another
Yeah, we
show,
should
right?
save that for
Yeah.
the next show because I literally think there are a couple guys who I think that are going to be on that level. But
Yeah.
from this list, I don't know. Like for folks watching, make the argument. I mean, I think the two Zeppelin guys are going to be close, but not quite. And I don't know if anybody else really hits on this kind of a
And I'm thinking Alice Cooper, really.
possibly yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, you know, would I love to see a Deep Purple kind of tribute concert? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You
Yeah.
know what? Just the fan in me would like to see one for them. I would love to see an Aerosmith one. I would like
Yeah.
to see a Kiss one, a Deep Purple, a Zeppelin. Let's bring it on, right? Because the Sabbath
Yeah.
thing was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Martin, get us caught up on what's going on with you. Book news, contrarians, podcasts, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so there's still the Contrarians. I've been a little quiet lately, but I'm going to get back in it. I've had a lot of deadlines, book deadlines. And obviously, I have kept up with History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, the audio podcast. My site is put on maintenance right now because of all this tariff stuff going on. But if you contact me through either Facebook or email me at martinpete@inforamp.net, there are certain books I can still sell you. I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, but the big ones right now are the what do we got here? So this is brand well, okay, so we've still got this. You can order this from me in the States or Canada, not overseas, the big massive Iron Maiden book. But you'll just have to contact me and I'll tell you how to do that. PayPal, because like I say, my site's not around, right? And then this just came into the warehouse yesterday, the new Dio book, which you can also order from me. And the way these are going to happen now is they're going to ship direct from the publisher, and I'm going to mail you a signed book plate to put with it, a Schiffer Publishing book plate. So that just came out, and I may as well show you this, but this one I can't do anything with. Well, actually, email me. We can talk about it, but The 7 Decades of Deep Purple is my new one that's coming out late September. So yeah, that's that's a lot of pages there
That's a
to
monster.
read.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So those are the last three books. And that is like, I don't know, what is that? 2,000 pages of Deep
That's like
Purple.
20 pounds of tree right there,
I
Martin. Look
know
at that.
that's a lot of weight. So so that's all happening, and yeah, that's it.
Cool. All right. Let's see what's happening here. Tune in tomorrow. Jamie Laszlo, excuse me, and the review crew happening tomorrow evening. So that's coming up tomorrow. Sunday, we've got Ranking the Albums a Fast Way in the morning, and then in the early evening, What Is It episode with me and Brendan Snyder, Grant Arthur, Scott Lade, and Phil Aston talking about the career and the music of Styx. So that's coming up over the weekend. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks for kind of part two of this here at the Funhouse. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram all the damn time. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. For folks here in the States, happy Labor Day. Enjoy your long weekend. And we'll see you on the flip side. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.